the stories go long. Is an hour okay?
Ron, I'm fine. You know, I can go on for most of the rest of the day, probably.
Yeah, like I think that if you're doing an hour, then I'm probably not going to get a word in edgewise. Actually.
Oh shit! Whoa!
Let Ron have his own hour later, okay?
Perfect.
Like we could tell you guys are rock and roll because already we're starting to butt heads. We'll have Ron. Okay, Ron, you can be the opener. John, you can headline the show. Let's.
Is that a good wait? Is that a guitar in the corner there? What do you got?
It's.
Is that a? That looks like an. Is that an 8?
Please don't ask him to play. Please don't ask him to play. Please don't ask him to play.
No, it's okay. Is that a bass? What is that?
It's literally just it's probably like a Sears guitar.
Sears guitar.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's
looks good.
That's what I would call it. I don't. I meant to start playing it during the pandemic.
Is it a prop? Is it more of a prop than it is an actual?
For this show, it's a prop.
It's a prop. Okay. So all the more reason. Would you mind just show me where you're at with it? Just do show me your best.
Greg, okay, hold on. You're
Go
putting
ahead.
me on the spot. All right, let's see if we could. I was able to play.
Yeah.
Hold on. I was. Yeah. Here we go.
So do you normally use the pick for your teeth? Is that sort of your?
It's the rock and roll look.
Because I like it. It's good. It's good.
There's.
Yeah.
There's someone.
You take the pick, you put it in your mouth, and then you play the guitar, right?
Yeah. Okay. Who's the guitarist that was biting on his pick? It was a metal pick, and then something happened.
Yeah.
I thought I read something about some guitarist.
That's a different interview. Okay, so go ahead. Go ahead.
You don't want to hear me, John, because now I've forgotten. I think I was learning the D and the E chord.
Right.
So that
have you do the E chord? Let's start with the E chord.
Is this the E?
Oh, that's out of tune.
Can I ask you a question? Have you done tuning? Like, have you learned how to tune the guitar yet?
Look at that! I got one of these things. Okay. So I think we should get. We're gonna get back to the interview. I think. But that was a great. Welcome to the music.
I think that's the pre-show.
Have we lost?
Excuse me, dude. If that's welcome to the music, and the music's in real trouble, I got to tell you. Okay.
Yes.
Oh my goodness. Ron has called me out. The secret is out. Karim doesn't play guitar. It is only a prop.
Yeah.
But who knows?
Okay.
One of these days.
Hi, the following podcast is brought to you by Radical Road Brewery, the best craft beer in the heart of Leslieville. Find them at 1177 Queen Street East. That's Radical Road Brewery.
Hi, I'm Ron Chapman. I'm director and co-producer of the film Revival69.
Hi, I'm Johnny Brower, poet, priest, politician, actor, singer, and musician. And here we are. Welcome to the music!
Welcome. It is so good to have you guys on here. There's the out-of-tune guitar again. It's amazing to have you on here. I don't know how much we're going to get into. I know we're going to get into stories. Just for anybody listening, if you don't want to know all the stories, watch the movie and then come back and listen to the conversation. Or if you want to get a deeper conversation or deep dive into the movie, we're about to get into it. So, gents, what I want to say is, after watching the movie, what blew me away, like honestly, there were so many what because this was a movie of firsts and lasts for me as a former musician. Again, I was 2 years old at the time when the concert went on, but I mean, I was just blown away by the firsts and lasts. I don't know if you guys have any thoughts around that, or if there was any did Did
Why
you?
don't you explain what that means? The first and the last. Is this the first time you've seen a rock and roll movie, and the last time you want to see
And
one?
the last time he's going to watch one.
I see where
I
this
mean,
is
Ron,
going.
why are we doing this interview? These guys hate us.
Not far. I was at the office today telling everybody that when this documentary comes out, they have to watch it because they're going to be, like I said, just blown away by the amount of things they didn't realize happened in Toronto at a festival that many of them don't even know about. And again, first and last, first time people playing, first time, legends, like not legends, but like with Alice Cooper, the story behind that, the first time for that, the last time for the Doors with anyway, it just, I think, anyway, I thank you for the movie because it was amazing.
Thank you so much, but I do think I totally get what you're saying, first and last, and I agree. I mean, there's just all kinds of firsts and there's all kinds of lasts in there, and that's actually a beautiful way of putting it. I haven't heard it articulated that before, but it's very nice.
Well, thank you. Thanks for.
And I think as we go through the interview, but certainly when people see the movie, they're going to have a much better understanding of what you're saying, because what you're saying is a little more ethereal than just here's all these facts. But I think it's very, very nice what you said. It's great.
That's the way I was describing it. I would sum it up by saying I don't want to tell you too much until you see it.
Yeah.
But it ends with the end of the Beatles, and they're like, okay.
Yeah.
Like literally the end. I wanted to ask you, John, because as I was watching it, there were so many times where you could have said, let's just fuck this. Let's get out of Dodge. Outside of Edjo, hunting you down, you must have wanted to quit this thing 100 times.
Never once. Never quit. Never say never. It was always like, we can make this happen. Something's going to happen. There was always a ray of hope, ray of sunshine there through the hole in the donut. And there were miracles that happened along the way that vindicated my belief and my ability to get everybody else to come along for the ride. That's all I can tell you, that it was a question of what else are you going to do? What, are you going to just not do it? No, we had too much opportunity there to sacrifice at any one time. And Ken Walker, stood by me, even though there were times after Chum threw us out 2 days in a row that he was ready, because he figured once Thor Eaton found out, he double pulled the plug. So we just didn't tell Thor Eaton. We called Detroit and got somebody that would believe us. And the next thing everything turned around.
Sorry, go ahead, Greg.
I was going to say what blew certainly my wife away last night when we were watching the movie was you were 23 at the time. Was that
22? Don't age
22.
me.
Sorry, I don't want to age you. Sorry, my apologies.
Bad enough right now. Don't do it back then.
Our kids, we have like Brady Bunch 4. So our kids are 25 through 28. And Kelly, my wife, was just like, I can't even fathom any of our kids going through what you did to pull that off. I just hats off.
Exactly. The age of John and Kenny and what they accomplished then. And again, you're not seeing them on the first summer of their career. John had the Rock Pile before that. He had done an incredible history and legacy of some of the top artists in the world that he had introduced Toronto to, that Toronto never would have known if it wasn't for his vision. And that same kind of confidence you just heard, where he was like, absolutely, I was never going to stop doing this. He is cut from that mold where he just got stuff done and nothing was going to stop him or deter him. And that's an incredible quality that you don't see in a lot of people.
Yeah, absolutely.
John, what did you want when you first started out putting this one-day festival, one-day concert together? In your mind, what was it supposed to be? Because I'm just imagining it. It's not what it ended up being. So I'm wondering, what was it supposed to be?
Well, it was supposed to be Chuck Berry on steroids with, his contemporaries. And he was so good in June at the Pop Festival. He literally had 25,000 people trying to do the duck walk and falling all over each other and laughing and just loving him. And despite the fact we had Sly and the Family Stone, the band, and Steppenwolf, who all put on incredible shows, Chuck Berry stole the zeitgeist of the moment. And that was the inspiration to think, well, if Chuck could do that, what would it be like to have all of them on the same show? And that was the inspiration for it. And that's what led it right through to its ultimate, being put together and the cosmic giggle. How about when all of those guys were all available on the same day? Do you not think that was a confirmation that we were on the right track? Absolutely.
And then nobody bought tickets. Well, I don't want to say nobody, but like you guys were under pressure.
7 people bought tickets.
7. You and your buddies.
Yeah, me and my buddy. No, we had a couple thousand sold the week of the show, which was nothing. It was negligible.
Yeah.
And so it was a disaster. In June, we had like 8 or 10,000 sold the week of the show, and it just was, the graph was just going through the roof, heading up. And so it was obvious that anybody that knows how to make a chart would have seen that the rock and roll revival was going into the proverbial pooper. So wise accounting and business dictated, let's pull the plug and cut our losses. Well, but for Kenny and I, it wasn't financial losses. It would have been disaster. We would have not been able to book other bands. We would have not been able to continue as these, guys that had done so much so well. And it would have been something that, this is, somebody asked me on another interview, what would you tell yourself as a 15-year-old if you could look back and give yourself some advice? And I said, go to law school and start a hedge fund. I mean, like really, looking back, there are, easier ways to get through this life. But rock and roll, got in my blood, just like Ron. We started out musicians, started out hustling, promoting, doing all that. And once it gets you, it gets you. And that becomes, something that translates into maybe other fields. Ron's a filmmaker. I've been involved in NFTs, drilling oil wells. I mean, it's the same thing. You're drilling a hole in the ground. You don't know what's there. You got to believe some geologist with horn-rimmed glasses and a map is going to tell you this is where to do it. And so, it's all the same. When you're a hustler and an entrepreneur, you have that in your blood. You find ways for it to get out into an active occupation.
Yeah. When you had the 2,000 tickets sold, was like, I don't know if you had time to think then or if you were able to, figure things out later, post show. Why wasn't there that excitement that was earlier in the spring at the Pop Festival?
Well, at the end of in the spring, school was out. In the fall, school was getting ready to go back. I mean, it's easy to look back. Nobody thought about that at the time. Kids had to get money from their parents. They had to be able to stay out late. I don't know if that was a factor. It was like everybody was burned out from the summer. It's like, who are these old rock and rollers? I don't know. I really don't know. But it just didn't catch. The magic didn't catch. And sometimes, you think you have a great idea. Ron captures it really well in the movie. I don't want to spoil anything, but where he has this light bulb over my head. Like, I thought this was a great idea. But anybody will tell you that, they've had ideas that they thought were great and they turned out to be not so great. But you couldn't see that. You were too caught up in the belief in your idea, and it sounded like a good idea at the time.
Yeah. And so you were able to go ahead, Greg.
No. I was going to say to throw over to Ron. I mean, one of the things I did love about it, and John, you mentioned it, was that the mix of the animation and the actual archival footage and current interviews. And I thought that was brilliant. Was that like, how did that come together to do that? Was that sort of to fill in some of the pieces, or was it?
Well, there's a whole bunch of different ways to tell a story in a film. And I really, saw this from the beginning. I thought this thing should be a great rock and roll wild roller coaster ride and a romp. And to get that kind of exuberance and fun across, I clearly felt that the footage, the archival footage, was key. Mm-hmm. I thought that key interviews with key individuals that would illuminate the story and give it breadth, using John and his story as really the foundation, but building it out around there to get all kinds of different perspectives about what was going on two continents at the time, as this thing came together, was key. And the other thing, very quickly, what so many films do is they do recrees for stuff that they don't have, and because this film was 1969, there was very little documentation, visual documentation of anything going on. It's not like now where everyone's got a cell phone, everyone's got a camera, everyone's recording video. So nobody was recording nothing. If you look at that concert at the time, you had all these greats together. Do you think there's a shot of them all together? How could that not happen in this day and age? It didn't happen then, Lennon with any of those guys, there's no shot. So I actually thought that, and especially because I was dealing with subjects like Lennon stuff, that doing those recrees that happened would cheapen the film. And yet, going for an animation style, I guess I thought is a lot of fun. I think it's very much part of the culture, looking from South Park to all the other Simpsons, all the other stuff that is just, it's a language that people are quite used to. And frankly, a language that the Beatles really started bringing into the pop culture back with Yellow Submarine.
Yeah,
yes.
So that was really, when I was thinking about what to do and how to tell those parts of the story, I went, definitely not going to do recreation, definitely think that animation would give this a great kind of feel and a fun feel. And I looked long and hard and found a great animator, Matthew Denboer, who had actually never done a film before. But he was passionate and he was talented, and I knew he was the right guy for this, and he was an absolute pleasure to work with, and I think did just an amazing job on helping bring this film to the screen.
Now there was archival footage. I was wondering, how did you go about securing that and accessing all of that? That was phenomenal stuff that we actually did see.
Well, I went to, D.A. Pennebaker, as you know from the film, came and shot the concert. D.A. Pennebaker had shot Don't Look Back, the film with Bob Dylan, crazy famous film that really established a cinema verite look. He's really known as the father of cinema verite in North America. He also shot Monterey Pop, which is one of the great pop films. And he heard about this festival also pretty last minute, but he went, you know what? I'm going to go shoot this because this festival is going to be the best of all my films. He idolized all the greats that John had decided to bring together and present to, a younger audience: Chuck Berry, Little Richard, Jerry Lee Lewis, all those guys. And so he came and shot the festival. In fact, and he made a film. The film was a total failure. Oh. Nobody was interested, and it bankrupted his company and broke up his partnership. But he then survived that, and he went on to do over 50 films. But as much as he loved it, it was a success. He threw all the stuff in cardboard boxes and shipped it off to Iron Mountain, and there it sat until I decided to make this film. And I approached D.A. Pennebaker and said, "Look, I really want to do this film, and I want to access all the footage. I want you to come on as an executive producer, and let's revive the footage, let's revive the moment, and let's bring this moment to the kind of glory that you had hoped to accomplish when you did this project." At the time, I guess it would have been about 49 years ago, because I think that's when I spoke to him. And he came on as an exec producer, and he gave me access to what ended up being over 60 hours
Wow.
of 16 millimeter footage that was shot at the concert. You know, performances that were never seen, like the Gene Vincent, never before seen performances, and all kinds of other stuff. And I also discovered 2 hours of Super 8 footage that hadn't ever been developed, which just had amazing stuff on it. And I, transferred all of that stuff to 4K. We also found wild audio that was done by some of his crew. You know, there's great moments where you hear Little Richard talking and stuff like that, that are just amazing. So we were able to really bring back and it was important to me, I really saw the film, I hope, to transport people from the opening to the end, to take them out of this world that we live in now and take you back to that moment in 1969 where there was no corporate rock, there was no Live Nation, there was no AEG, where a 22-year-old kid could pick up the phone and call John Lennon, get him on the phone, and actually have him say, yeah, that sounds cool. A festival in Toronto. How long? In 2 days? Okay, I'll throw a band together and come and play. And he didn't have a band, and he didn't know what he was going to play. And he had never played with any of these guys before. But he was so rock and roll, and that he just said, yeah, I'll do it. I love those guys. I love Little Richard. I want to be there on a stage with them. And he went. How does that happen in this day and age,
It's nuts.
How does what huge rock stars are going to go and put, and expose themselves to whatever that could be, having never played with these guys before, a full set of material where they had never played the material before, and so that was really, my hope in the film, that it would bring people back to another time where the kind of optimum, the kind of, chutzpah that John and his partner had existed, where you could go and do stuff like that, and where rock performers, where artists were just moved by passion, not moved just by dollars. He didn't. John, how much did you pay Lennon to come and play at the festival?
Well, we paid him $265, which was scale, because the guy from the Toronto Musicians Union came out to the airport with a contract, and Alan Klein tried to hit me up in the men's washroom for 10 grand. And he said, well, if we can't get some money for the band, they might not play. And I said, well, of course they're going to play. John signed a contract. And Klein looked at me and he goes, what? And I told him, yeah, Tony Josefito from the Musicians Union came out and we signed a contract for $265. Klein was furious.
So guys, John Lennon, on his first performance without the Beatles, with the Plastic Ono Band in their first performance at a stadium gig, John Brower paid him $263.
65. Don't take two.
Excuse me.
We're getting numbers wrong here today.
But clearly, the point being, he knew when he came he wasn't getting anything really. The money had nothing to do with it.
Nothing.
Money had nothing to do with his decision.
Times have changed.
And that's what made it such an amazing event. And that's what makes the energy that you see happening within the film. When you see those artists, the way they're performing, the way they're all putting out, those performances are some of the best performances that any of those artists ever did. And what you're seeing is that exuberance and that passion. And also the first time and last time that all of those artists were on one stage together. I'm talking about the old rockers, right? They never all appeared on another stage together again after that. They were all they were playing for each other. They were playing for props, watch me. Oh yeah, well, watch me. They all went out there and they gave it their all. It was, it's just an amazing moment in rock history.
Absolutely. John, I know Ron mentioned about, the John Lennon putting together a band at the last minute, and I mean, you want to talk about a list of musicians that he was able to pull together. When did you know, did you know, or when did you find out the band John put together for that show?
Well, when I called up the next day to get the names for the plane tickets, because that was critical, was to get plane tickets and immigration for them to come into the country. So we knew Eric Clapton. We had Eric Clapton's name on the tape that we played for Chum. And I remember the guy saying to me, Eric Clapton, that was a nice touch. Like, you know, as if, you threw in Eric Clapton as well there for a little bit of a closer, right? Get the F out of here. Yeah.
Wow. I can't even fathom. I can't even fathom finding that out and knowing who he put together. I mean, I don't know.
Ron, how did you? When was the first time you heard, Ron, about this concert that happened in '69?
Well, I knew about it for a long time.
Yeah,
you know, because listen. I was just at Whistler at a film festival in Whistler. We played the film a couple of times, sold out houses, and the moderator was from Toronto, Paul Grattan, and he came up to me before. He said, "Ron, I can't believe this film you did, and I can't believe I know nothing about the event. I'm from Toronto. I'm almost of that era. And I never heard of this thing before." And he turned to the audience and he said, everybody who's heard of this show before, you know, the concert, before you came to the screening, put up your hands. 2 people put up their hands in one screening. 3 people put up their hands in another screening. You know, unless you're a music industry insider or a Beatles minutia nut, nobody really knows about this because it wasn't really reported widely. There, like no Americans came, tons of journalists and all that stuff. I mean, Woodstock had happened. There was other stuff. I think there was some fatigue out there at that point. And really, other than Robert Christgau, who's in the film, the dean of American rock, one of the great rock critics of our time, other than him attending. And by the way, the only reason that Robert attended is because he was doing an article on D.A. Pennebaker. If he wasn't doing an article following D.A. Pennebaker, Robert Christgau wouldn't have been there. And there would have been nobody but the local Toronto journalists covering this event. It's incredible.
And then why did you... Sorry, go ahead. Yeah. Finish that off, Ron.
Well, so as I said, I did another rock film before, Who the Fuck is Arthur Fogel? And which was about Arthur Fogel, who's head of Live Nation, and was at the time, nobody knew who he was, hence the title. And yet he was a Canadian, and he was the most important guy in the music business, having done 8 of the top 10 tours of all time, including Lady Gaga and Madonna and the U2 and the Police and just tons of stuff. And I really was interested in doing stories about Canadians, Canadian stories that were of international significance, not just like localized or local, great Canadian, but nobody else in the world has any idea. But I felt there are stories that, show how Canada is impacted internationally. That was one of those stories. I made that film and it went out and played in 54 countries around the world. And now Arthur can't order a pizza, without the guy going, "Hey, you're Arthur Fogel." So after that one, the next film that I wanted to do was this particular story because, it's just incredible to me. This story, Rolling Stone called this story the second most important event in rock history. So you have to ask yourself, if this is the second most important event in rock history, if it happened to happen in Toronto, but it did, it's a Canadian story. If it wasn't for a Canadian, John Brower, this story would never have happened. And tell me a story, it's the biggest the biggest rock story in Canada's history, and nobody knows about it. Mm-hmm. So is that great fodder for a film? I mean, it's about time that the story got out, and it's about time not just the Canadians know about it. I mean, yes, I'm interested in that, but to me, it's more interesting that the world know how far ahead of its time Canada was, because Canada has always been musically, a step ahead of the States and a step ahead of a lot of other countries in terms of what it did. This whole thing was a step ahead of the world in terms of what John actually ended up doing with that concert, bringing these rock and roll greats together to play for the first time to a young audience who is listening to like 60s music. Mm-hmm. Bringing together acts who are presently breaking, like Chicago. So the acts of the past the acts of the present, and Alice Cooper, nobody knew who the fuck he was at the time, you know, and the Plastic Ono Band, acts of the future. He brought together the past, the present, and the future in this one thing. And in that mix of all these people intermingling, and for the artist, it was a huge, you know, you hear about the backstage and what was going on and the intermingling of the artists. For them, it was an amazing cathartic experience also being together, you know. And for John Lennon, of course, that moment, final nail in the coffin, he was heard to, when he came off the stage, to say, that's it, I got my mojo back, I'm me. He was then fully focused on, that's it, I'm done. He got on a plane, he went back to England, he walked into Apple and said, gentlemen, I quit, I'm done. So it was that moment in rock history. Is there a bigger moment in rock history than the actual end of the Beatles?
Yeah. John,
so telling this story, you know, to me, this is almost, you know, it's like the sequel to 8 Days a Week or Get Back. It's what happened after that. This fills in the blanks of the end of the Beatles.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. John, I'm hoping you can take me back, especially. You know, what was life like for you in the way that, you know, you've got big dreams of putting on this, what turned out to be an amazing festival. You happen to know, you know, when it comes to finance, you joked a little bit earlier saying you should have been a lawyer and started a hedge fund, but, you know, you knew a leader of a biker gang that helped finance this whole thing. What was life like for you in the 60s? What's going on in your world?
Well, you know, in the 60s, I left. I played in a band. I had a band called the Diplomats. We used to play with, you know, the Rogues. We used to play with John Lee and the Checkmates, played the Pepsi Under 21 Club. This was all while I went to Upper Canada College. I mean, I used to have to sneak down to the village, bring my village clothes to school in a bag. It was totally verboten in the early part of the 60s to be down there. But then I went to California. And so I got 2 years of being in California, 66 and 67. And I got to see a lot of that culture. And so when I came back to Canada, you know, I looked around for something to do, and there wasn't really a whole lot going on. And I had gotten married. I eloped with my teenage bride. You know, I like to get a jump start on everything. And moved back into my bedroom at my mom's place in Rosedale. And that's when I got my friend Jamie Sifton, and we went to his uncle, Chuck Rathgeb, and got the money to bring the Doors to Toronto in 68. And Chuck Rathgeb had a company called Comstock Construction. And he was congratulating us for getting into the construction business and loaning us the money. He thought we were buying doors. And it was like unbelievable. He was a little hard of hearing, and he was busy on another thing. And he was going, boy, that's great. You're getting into the business. So, I mean, that's how that got started. And when that show happened, I just became like the guy doing the big rock shows. It was like, what's your next show? And that's when I met Russ Gibb in Detroit. And that's when Russ and I brought Jimi Hendrix there. That's how I knew Russ and was able to call him and rescue that phone call that was taped and play it to him. And of course, he had a show on college radio every night in Michigan at Ann Arbor. And so he had a huge audience. I mean, people, when they came to the show, nobody could find a place to park because for 10 blocks, every parking spot had a car with Michigan plates in it. They poured in overnight, Friday, from Michigan. And to Chum's credit, they sold out the rest of the show the day of the show. Mm-hmm. And this is just, you know, I wish this had been in the movie, but it wasn't. And maybe we didn't need to beat up Chum too much. But when John Lennon gave a press conference at the curb at Heathrow Airport, it went out on his ticker tape, you know, machine all over the world. And in the newsroom at Chum, they had a heart attack, like, oh my God, it's real. And they went on the air, took credit for it. Chum presents worldwide exclusive, John Lennon arriving tonight, da 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 da. That brought people pouring down to the stadium. And at one point, we had to let 1,500 people in free because we had no more tickets to sell. And they were at the Northwest Gate, and they were pressing and pressing. And the police on horseback were like, going, what are we going to do? And I just said to Kenny, look, we sold the show out. Let's let them in for nothing. And we did. We let them in, and they came roaring in, 1,500 more people.
Wow.
So to Chum's credit, they may not have believed us in the beginning, but they did create a frenzy in Toronto the minute that ticker tape came up in the office.
That's crazy. That's John. I mean, outside of this movie and learning about what you did, it's not normal for a 20-year-old to get the Doors, to get Jimi Hendrix, to put this particular concert on. You must have been the most important kid or person in Toronto music in the late 60s.
Well, I might have been one of the only ones. Marty Onrot was a promoter. We used to go to his shows. He was a little bit older. He was doing pretty staid, conservative stuff. But remember, I had a band, and I was the guy that would go to the church and rent the basement. I was the guy that would go to the Crane Plaza and get our band booked there. So I was doing that for our band.
Yeah.
So it was not a stretch to put on a concert. And, it was just a bigger bunch of elements, but it was all the same thing. Now, we used to have to bring a sound system when we play at churches. They didn't have anything like that. We'd have to bring in all our equipment. We'd have to sell tickets if it was a ticketed event. So it was a leap, but it was a leap of faith, but it was also doing the same thing on a bigger scale. It wasn't the beginning of like, oh, wow, how do you do this? What should we do? I had that kind of system already down on a much smaller scale.
What was the first big show that you put together?
Well, the Doors was the first big concert that I did. And as I said, it was at the CNE Coliseum. And, it was very scary. I mean, like I was with my teenage bride still living back in my mom's house, moved back there. And, when I rode in the limo with Jim back from the airport alone, when we got to the hotel, they opened the door and let him out. And he stopped and turned back in and looked at me and said, hey, man, thanks for not talking. I was too terrified to open my mouth. I was sitting with Jim Morrison, and we sold the show out. And the next day, the agent calls me and goes, you did good, kid. You sold the show out. And Jim told me he likes the promoter. Yeah, I guess so, because he didn't say a word to him in a limo for half an hour. I just had to basically play it by ear and just try to, be the guy to get the job done.
Yeah, the first show you put together is the Doors. Like, the Doors are huge then.
Yeah, they were. And that was when Jim was the Lizard King, believe me. I mean, girls were screaming and fainting at the Coliseum. And, a year later, Jim had, dramatically been really, really knocked down by that whole incident in Miami. And, when I see him in the film, I mean, he was standing there just in awe of these rockers. I mean, I think that was a really beautiful moment for all of them. I mean, you can see Ron shows clearly them on stage, which is amazing. You've got, Jerry Lee Lewis playing, and the Doors are standing in the wings watching them. I mean, what? And Huey Leggett playing with Chuck Berry going, I look over and I realize I'm playing with Chuck Berry and Jim Morrison's watching us. I'm like, oh my God. These were incredible moments for a lot of Torontonians, a lot of you musicians. I mean, I love that Ron included some of that stuff in there. It's so authentic.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was what I thought was fantastic too. You talk about reactions. Even seeing the reactions of the band when Yoko started singing, and it was just like you just see them look at each other like, and then it was just like, okay, we're gonna go with it. But it was really like they're like, what the I don't know if I'm reading into it, but it's almost like, what the fuck is going on? What's going on right now? And then click, boom. Am I correct in that assessment?
Yeah, no, they had no idea. There was no rehearsal. They didn't know what she was going to do. They didn't know how she was going to participate in the performance, and they didn't know how she was supposed to lead the performance. John just said, "Do this.
Now
Here's what
Yoko's
we
gonna
do."
do her thing all over you.
Yeah, yeah.
John, if there's one memory or one thing that you take from this concert, what was it that you, when it was all said and done, that you sit back and you go, "Fuck, I'm glad I got to witness this." Was there a moment?
Well, the moment had to be watching John on stage and realizing that, from this phone call that turned out to, be, like just a phone call, because it almost didn't happen. Even though he said, yeah, but getting his band together, I mean, that was just another miracle. There was a series of those miracles, as Ron shows really brilliantly in the film. The fact that, aside from riding in the limo with Rodney Bingenheimer, John and Yoko, and like 6 bikers in front of us and like 100 of them behind, that was a moment when I just was like, because I remember when we pulled into the center section, it was John did not know what was going on. And so, when he realized what it was, I think he said to Yoko, we had motorcycle escorts with the Beatles, but nothing like this, as he looked back. It was like, because the Beatles would have a couple motorcycles in front and a couple in the back. I think that might also have been the first time that John felt like, yeah, I like doing this on my own. You know what?
Yeah.
I like this. I like it just being me and Yoko. This feels good.
And John, when he had motorcycles front and back, they were police.
Yeah. Oh, they were police.
They were police. I mean, this was, bike gang.
This was Toronto's
And
finest.
bikers were romantic. This was before Altamont. This was in September. Bikers were romantic. I mean, Peter Fonda and Dennis Hopper and their choppers going across America, and different biker movies. Jack Nicholson in those biker movies in the early 60s. I mean, bikers were romantic, and Edjo was a romantic character. I mean, he could have been a movie star. And that's shown clearly in this. Ron has captured film footage nobody knew anybody had, but stuff of Edjo that is classic. I mean, this guy is like a romantic hero, and he's the head of the biker gang. And he looks like he could have been a movie star. It's crazy.
I loved his line. It's something like, something about like, you don't want to make enemies, or
nobody needs enemies.
Nobody needs enemies. I thought that's awesome. I mean, that's just
kind of understated, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Ron, you had a chance to go through all that archival material. What was there what was your favorite moment that may or may not have made it into the actual film?
Yeah, that's so tough. That's a tough one, I always have that, top 10 list. What's your favorite?
Yeah.
I have difficulty with those things. I mean, there were so many incredible moments discovered in the making of this film within the archival footage that honestly, I got to say, it's impossible for me to say, oh, this one moment was it. I mean, there's so many impactful and beautiful moments that I'm sorry, I'm unable to answer the question. It would be a long answer, and there's moments everywhere. The footage was such a discovery. Going through that footage when I first went through it, it was during COVID, and we set up cameras, and D.A. Pennebaker's wife and producing partner Chris Hegedus, we looked at it all on the Steenbeck. The Steenbeck. A Steenbeck is a big flat bed that you take these rolls of film and rolls of audio, they're separate, and you put them through from reel to reel, and it plays on a little screen up here.
Wow.
And you drive the film through it. It's like something out of the dark ages. Like nobody knows what it is. It's way before the digital age. And you sort of set up a camera, and it took about a week and a half or so to go through it. Watching this footage, I was in awe. That week and a half was just incredible seeing performances like nobody's ever seen. Gene Vincent playing with Alice Cooper. When I spoke to Shep Gordon and Alice, I told them that I had this footage. They were like, "You got to be kidding!"
Wow.
There's footage of us playing with Gene Vincent. I mean, that was a pivotal moment in his career, as he makes clear in the film. That Gene Vincent footage is just magical. The Chicago footage is 100%. Incredible. The performances are just not to be believed. The energy of Bo Diddley doing what he, doing his Diddley beat stuff. Little Richard in that mirrored vest, and the intensity of his performance and stuff. I mean, it is all just awesome. The backstage stuff that we discovered. Seeing them all hanging out and stuff. It's all and the biker stuff, out on the highway coming in, all of that. It's just a treasure trove of images from that era that are like a gift. They're like a gift. Like, all we've had for the last 50 years is Woodstock, and Monterey Pop, and they keep making, the next Woodstock and the next Woodstock and then the next Monterey Pop. They keep making different versions of these same things that happened back then. This just opens up, a whole new world for people to discover, what was going on in the culture at the time. And so, like I said, it's all just, I was overwhelmed by what a gift this whole experience was.
Nice.
And the audio was, the audio quality is fantastic. So I need to ask how much work went into, went into not fixing, but bringing the archival footage up to the quality that it is today. No,
fixing is a good word. So that's okay. I mean, the audio quality was not great. And I worked on my last bunch of films with a brilliant sound technician, Daniel Pellerin, who's just amazing. The actual tracks that we got were mixed down live from the board onto a half-track mono, so we didn't even have stereo. So and sound quality was really questionable. I mean, you have the live band playing, you're trying to mix something, you can't even hear because sound's coming in. But we spent a lot of time, and Daniel has a lot of magic, a lot of tricks up his sleeve, where he was able to get that sound and make it sound amazing for what it is. Amazing. So kudos to him. It really ended up being fantastic. The track has, real energy, and it has breadth, and it has width. All of those things.
Yeah, 100%.
So thank you for noticing that.
Yeah, John. I don't know. Are you known as the guy who broke up the Beatles? Like, is that in Wikipedia now?
I don't know. It probably will appear there. I'll be chastised and tracked down on social media. I'll have to shut down my account.
Twitter trolls will be all over you.
Take on a nom de guerre or something, or dress up as Yoko. I don't know. Whatever. I'll figure it out.
No, I don't. I mean, I would. Just like Ron's got some stuff framed in the background. I would frame that shit, man. Not that breaking up the Beatles is but it's like, you're the man. Like, this event, it's more so you gave John Lennon I don't know, the second coming, rather than breaking up the Beatles, is the way that I would look at it.
Well, we gave him a platform, from which he was able to launch his solo career.
Yeah.
That's as simple as I can put it. And that's just all we did. There was no, forethought of like breaking up the Beatles. I mean, I said to somebody recently, I didn't realize the Beatles were at each other's throats at that time. That was not public knowledge.
That's right.
It wasn't on the news. So John Lennon just came and was going to play and just be like the old days and throw a band together and rock on.
Yeah.
The whole aspect of the Beatles breaking up the next week was like, whoa, because that was news. That did come out. But it didn't come out officially until Paul left months later after the Capitol Records deal was done. But I don't know. We were just thinking that John Lennon's going to come over and play rock and roll because he's going to play with Chuck Berry and he loves Chuck Berry.
And I really think, it wasn't just that John gave them this platform. I mean, they gave John a successful festival at the same time.
Yeah.
And that opportunity, it just, it's one of a number of things that were like happenstance in the story becoming reality. I mean, John was, pawing the ground, looking for an opportunity to get out and play. He was tired of sitting around, and all of a sudden here's his biggest heroes playing at this festival, and he's got an invite to come over and jump in the fray and play with them. He couldn't wait. It was, an opportunity that for him, like John gave him a gift, but he gave John a gift. It worked for everybody. And that's, of course, when real magic happens, when everybody's getting, their desires and their intentions. Everyone's getting what they want out of it.
Yeah. I honestly don't know whether John Lennon ever knew that had he not come to that show, it would not have happened. I don't think that there was ever any time that ever came up. It certainly never came up in any media stuff afterwards because there was hardly anything. As Ron has pointed out, it was like this great thing that happened, and then it was like it didn't happen. It was like a UFO sighting or something. And I don't think that in his lifetime there was ever any coverage of this or any discussion of any of this aspect of this event. And to that point, I think he just thought he came over and played at this great show, and the stadium was packed, and all the bands were there, and they played, and they managed to get through the set, and they went home.
Wow.
Yeah, and I can say no question. I did exhaustive research and had a research team, so we were looking for everything and anything that was ever said by Lennon, by Little Richard, by everybody about this particular concert. And so there was no indication ever that John knew that he came and supported a failing festival. It's like, he says there's a festival happening in Toronto, and I think there's going to be, 30, 40,000 people, and they invited us. Hey, let's go. He thought it was a successful festival from the start. He never had any indication that this festival was, on fumes.
And not only that, but Richie York had no idea either. He hadn't been in Toronto for a month. He'd been out, in Europe interviewing people and in London. And he was able to give us the green light and, say they had this great show in June. They know what they're doing and da-da-da-da-da. I don't know what Richie would have thought if he'd known that we had 2,000 tickets sold. He might have been a little less supportive of telling John, do it, get on, go do it, launch the Plastic Ono Band. So, there was not too much information out there. And there wasn't any information after the show. I mean, Ron, there will be a lot of people that will maybe have been there back in the day and go, wow, I had no idea that it was canceled. What?
Wow. I cannot wait to get to tell people about this movie, about this event. Ron, thank you for putting this together. John, thank your 20-something-year-old self for having the balls to put this together. Thank you for that. Thank you both for your time. this evening, and John, for you this afternoon. The movie is Revival 69, the concert that rocked the world. It is starting to see the light of day. It's opening across Canada, I think next week, playing in Hamilton at the Playhouse Cinema the weekend of December 16th, Waterloo at the Princess Cinema the weekend of December the 16th, Hot Doc Cinema over, I think, 2 weekends, weekend of the 17th, the weekend of the 27th. John, are you going to be in town?
I'm working on it.
Awesome.
Yeah, if I could just jump in for a second. Hot Docs, it's actually got a 2-week run.
2-week run of Hot Docs.
But on December 17th, Saturday, December 17th, we're having a premiere. I'm going to be there. Alan Cross is coming and doing a moderator.
Yep.
I'm going to be there for the Q&A. John's coming in, and he'll be there. Geddy Lee is going to be there, and Robbie Krieger will be part of the conversation live also.
Awesome.
So December 17th is a premiere. That's going to be an amazing night at Hot Docs.
Check it out. And I believe after that, it's going to be streaming as well.
Streaming on Crave.
No, it'll be on VOD for quite a while, and then eventually it'll make its way to regular Crave programming, but
awesome.
VOD for a long time.
Perfect. If you're a music fan, if you're a history fan,
you have to see this.
it is a must watch.
Yeah.
John, Ron, thank you so much for joining us. This has been
Thank both of you guys. Thank you so much. Bye, guys.
Thank you. A lot of fun, guys. Thank you.